This project is called Stop or Spread: The Effect of Different Material Face Masks on How Far a Sneeze Can Travel. Parts of the experimental process. Question: how do different material face masks affect how a sneeze can travel? Hypothesis: if I test different material face masks, then the KN95 mask will best stop the sneeze from going any further distances, because the KN95 mask has the thickest material and 5 total filters. Variables: during my experiment, I had 4 total variables, including a control, a dependent variable, an independent variable, and constants. My control group for this experiment is no mask. My dependent variable, or how I am measuring, is distance measured in centimeters. My independent variable that I am changing is the type of mask material. Constants. My constants in this experiment were the spray bottle, amount of water, Halloween mask, paper towels, angle at which the Halloween mask and the spray bottle were placed at, distance between the mask and the spray bottle, the liquid dye for the coloring, the temperature of the room, and the amount of trials. Literary review. When doing my research for my experiment, one of the things I researched was the weight of the liquid that comes from a sneeze. When searching, the only source I found was this source, which did not give me an exact weight. Instead of one weight, it gave me two: a high molecular weight of 2 to 40 MDA and a low molecular weight of 150 KDA. When trying to convert these to the weight of water, I was unsuccessful because I had never heard of KDA or MDA. Materials. During my experiment, I used a total of 25 different materials. Some of these materials I used for testing, like the tape measure and the work light. Others I used for setup, like the plastic boxes and the measuring cup. But in some way, they were all used during my experiment or before my experiment. Materials too. When doing my experiment, I took photos of some of my supplies. They're on the right-hand side of your screen. On the left-hand side, you can see another list of materials. This list contains more of the materials I used during my experiment, like the mask and the water. Procedures. During my experiment, there are 24 steps. Steps 1 through 15 are the setup steps. Some of the most important steps are in the setup steps portion, because if the experiment is set up wrong, the whole thing will mess up. Procedures Part 2. During Part 2 of the procedures, there are more steps on testing the different masks, because in Part 1 you mainly set up the area for the sneeze. One of the key steps is number 20, because in Step 20 you reset the paper towels. It's important to do this so there is no residue on the paper towels, because this could mess up the experiment. Graph and data table. During my experiment, I was measuring in centimeters to see where the farthest droplets landed. On the graph, you will see all the averages for each mask. On the data table, you will see all the trials and averages for each mask. The worst trials were the no mask trials, because nothing was there to block the sneeze from going a further distance. Conclusion. During my experiment, I was testing which mask material would stop a sneeze the best. My results showed that 2 masks prevented the sneeze from going a further distance. These 2 masks were the KN95 mask and the sports mask. My hypothesis was proved correct because the KN95 mask stopped the sneeze with its thick material and 5 layers. Before I did my experiment, I predicted that the KN95 mask would do the best because it had the thickest material and the most amount of layers. Works cited. This is a list of all the sources I used during my research. The first source told me how forceful a sneeze is. The second source told me about how much a sneeze weighs. The third source told me about if a mask is already wet, then the sneeze droplets will pass through easily and go a further distance. The fourth source told me about all the layers in the KN95 mask and what they do to filter out different pollutants. The last source is a dictionary. I use this for my glossary to look up all my words.